Well, Scott Miller, the Chief Executive Officer of Develop Indy, will become the president of the Greater Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce effective December 1. His vision includes a focus on education, workforce training, mass transit, and more in an effort to help build the region's economy. Scott Miller joins me in studio now for our executive conversation. And Scott, as always, welcome to the program.
Good, great to be here.
Before we get into your vision for the Chamber, this week was a big week for jobs in Indianapolis with the announcement of Lightbox, the startup company from California locating with the prospect of some 1,100 jobs. Your take, your comment on that deal and the significance.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things that we have really tried to work with is entrepreneurs and people who are willing to take a risk and willing to look and think big, but look at Indianapolis as a place to do that. And so Lightbox offers that opportunity. We feel that there's a fairly limited risk for the taxpayers because if the jobs or capital investment don't take place, then the incentives don't happen. But we also competed with some other states and some other cities throughout the nation, and so we thought if this was going to take off, we wanted it to take off here in Indianapolis.
As you look at Indianapolis and the state of Indiana, I think it's fair to say has had a reputation for being risk averse over the years, and many people would say to its detriment, not embracing or taking a hold of risk. Do you think the state, the Indianapolis region, maybe needs a little bit more of that, and looking at educated risks, I say, you know, right, smart risks, if you will, yeah, but looking at more entrepreneurial type startups and those types of things?
Yeah, I would call it measured risk. You know, if we're able to have a few of these companies that actually are able to grow and expand, you know, I always think back to Scott Dorsey 10 years ago at Exact Target, you know, and him going out and starting up his own initiative, and our tech community has done a great job here locally recently. This is a little bit of a different slant on things. There's some technology to it, but it's also manufacturing. Yeah. And if the idea and concept can catch on, we think it could be a great thing.
Yeah. As you look at your next role, which is a little more than a month away, officially as CEO of the Greater Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce, as you look at the opportunities and, for that matter, challenges facing the organization, facing the Indianapolis region, what do you want to really get in there and focus on day one?
Yeah, well, first of all, the Chamber has been an organization that's been around for 120 years and has had great stewards of the organization, great leaders. And I just look at this as my turn or opportunity to steward the organization for the next several years, hopefully. And I'm excited about that. But I think there are some big issues that our community needs to focus on. One of those is education, K through 12 as well as secondary education. How do we get more kids graduating from high school but also graduating from college? Second thing is mass transit. It's interesting, as I've been around talking to different groups, the groups who are generally over the age of 30, they kind of say, well, hey, I could drive a car to work. I don't need this. But those under 30, they've been brought up in an environment where the environment is important, and they've been educated in that way. And so, you know, where they live and work and play, they'd like to be able to use mass transportation. So whenever I do a little poll, that seems to be a big topic.
What do you think it's going to take? Because the mass transit issue has been around for a long time. The Chamber has done and continues to do extensive work in that area. It's an expensive venture. What's it going to take to move mass transit from off dead center?
Yeah. Well, I think there has to be a return on investment or a benefit that people will see. And that might be how do we attract that next generation or keep our kids here instead of allowing them to leave our city. You know, I know you've got a son and he's just graduated from college. We want to make sure that we keep those talented types of kids, DePaul graduates, here in Indianapolis and so that they can stay. And if mass transportation is an issue for them, we've got to address it.
And as we talked off camera, it's all about jobs. So whether it's education, workforce development, mass transit, it all comes back in many respects to the job issue.
It does. And another statistic, about 10% of the people here in central Indiana don't own an automobile. And yet they need to get to work, and they've got to figure out how to do that. So whether it's the bus system or some type of light rail, it is an economic development issue because sometimes today it may take several hours for somebody to get from one side of town to their job on the other, and that's just crazy.
How would you, Scott, assess the landscape for economic development in the region? There are a number of organizations here. It's been an issue that's been talked about for a long time. Perhaps there are too many, there needs to be some consolidation. How do you see that? What would you like to see happen going forward?
Yeah, and it's a topic, as you said, that has been discussed. You know, even when I was in the private sector, this is probably 6, 7 years ago, there was some talk about how do we bring together some of these organizations. And now being on the inside, I get a whole different view of it. Back on March 1st, we brought the Indy Partnership and Develop Indy under a kind of an umbrella organization. Indy Partnership still focuses on the region and attraction efforts. Develop Indy focuses on Marion County and especially retention and expansion efforts. But our boards, the Board of Develop Indy as well as the Board of the Greater Indianapolis Chamber, have been in discussions and talking about what that could look like as we move forward as a city. And we're trying to make the best decision for the business community and what gets us the greatest return and how do we bring more jobs to the city.
Would you anticipate, because it's been talked about for a long time, that one way or the other there will be a decision or a change in the offing?
Yeah, I think so. You know, things have, I think, heated up maybe over the last year as it relates to how could we do this and how should we do this. And so I think probably within the next year, maybe sooner, but I would say within the next year, a decision would be made.
Final question, we've got about 30 seconds, but as you look at Indianapolis, this region and where it's positioned from an economic development standpoint, an economy standpoint, compared with other peer cities in the rest of the country, how do you see the city and the region?
Well, you know, it's been talked about, we're being known as the next boom town. I think Forbes is the one that came out with that saying, but in the Midwest, from my perspective, we are beating people. We just added 13,000 new jobs to the local economy. And those jobs, those are people actually working. Those aren't job commitments. Those are people who actually have taken on employment this year. So we're really excited about that, and we think Indianapolis has great opportunities. We've got great momentum, and we just need to keep moving forward.
All right. Scott Miller, the incoming president, CEO of the Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Gary.
We'll talk to you.